Live at Onigashima, I'm Anthony.
And I'm Jimmy, and today, it's a little bit late, but we got chapter 1113, and we're going to do things a little bit differently. We're not going to go through the entire chapter this time. We're really just going to dive deep in some of the more interesting aspects of the chapter. So, one thing, just really quick to go over, really like the cover art for this week, the chess pieces, love all the mini choppers.
So much fun, yeah, it was so good. I want that chess set in real life. I think that'd be so sick.
Honestly, that would be great to play as. The only thing I would be sad about with this chess set in real life is not having a Nico Robin piece, but other than that,
true
fantastic.
that, yeah, maybe we get like I don't know what we would get. But all right, so this chapter, just to really quickly run through it, because I think we just need a little preface as to what happened. Clearly everybody is talking about the end of the chapter with what Vegapunk said. So his message finally gets out. You know, we see Punk records, we see his big ass brain, which is what we thought was going to happen, and the Gorosei are unable to get his message like stopped or whatever, and we see some skirmishes obviously between the Gorosei and the Straw Hats. Really cute Robin moment, but then we get this ending where Vegapunk says to the world that our world is going to sink into the ocean. And so a lot of speculation all over the place, people saying that Oda foreshadowed this from like miles and miles and miles away. A couple examples of that being the Noah's Ark. Obviously,
yeah,
that's
the
like
Noah's
the big
Ark
one.
is a pretty obvious one. Some of the other low-key ones that people have pointed out is Rayleigh becoming a shipcoder, Crocus living in a whale, all these references to like, oh, I mean, I don't know if you saw the pictures of Wano and like how subtly you can see like, oh, when it showed Wano in the past, the sea level was lower, but even after the walls were up, the sea level was above where it, like Wano used to be. So a lot of cool stuff like that. But I have like kind of two big things that I want to go over about the world sinking. And one of them, I think people have speculated this before, but we know that we need 4 road poneglyphs in order to find the final island, to find the One Piece.
Right.
And people have said it before, well, if it's on just the surface of the world, you really only need 3 to be able to triangulate the position. You wouldn't need a 4th one unless you were going in some type of Z direction, either going up or down. And most people thought that, hey, that means that we're going up, right? We're probably going to the moon. I think this chapter kind of kills that a little bit and kind of shows that, hey, we're not going up. We're actually going down. We're going underwater instead. And I think that kind of helps prove that maybe this city, this One Piece, this ancient kingdom was sunk to the bottom, kind of like the lost city of Atlantis. And maybe that's the name of the city, is Atlantis. And that would make sense because if the Gorosei had to stop Clover from saying the name, just saying the name is something like Laugh-Tale or something is not really going to do anything to the world. But if people are like, wait, Atlantis, like that sounds familiar. That's the ancient lost city of Atlantis, the underwater world. So I have a feeling that's what this could be leading to, and we're probably going to have to go underwater, which again brings back the whole Rayleigh thing of why he would need to coat ships.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Whoever's trying to get there needs to go underwater.
Exactly, and like if the One Piece is underwater, it would show us a lot of things. Like first of all, Shanks's crew with no devil fruits, right? Why? Because they need to go underwater to get the One Piece. Same thing with Roger's crew, right? There was no, they couldn't go down there with devil fruits because they wouldn't be able to get the One Piece or whatever. So the idea is that the One Piece is at the bottom of the ocean. I don't know if exactly it would be called like Atlantis. I feel like Oda would like change the name a little bit just to make it more One Piece-ish. Like, you know, he'd use Nika like a One Piece actual character instead of like Hanuman or whatever. But like, you know, I like the idea of there being, especially because Atlantis was supposed to be this like technologically advanced world, like in lore, right? So
which lines up perfectly with how we see the ancient kingdom now, seeing how they have like all this technology with like the ancient giant or the iron giant or whatever. And one of the other cool things I think this proves is why the government hates fishermen so much and wants to suppress them, because in reality, if everything is sinking, they are going to be the strongest race. Arlong was right the whole time. Like, they have way more power because they can actually swim underwater, find the One Piece. And maybe right now it's hard for them to find just because, I don't know, there's probably going to be some reason why it's hard for them to find, but it doesn't mean they can't do it.
Right.
And I think that's kind of like, it shows a lot more at the end of the chapter, where the very last panel we see is of the fishmen swimming underwater. And I think that's Oda hinting to us like, hey, these are going to be really important, and we kind of knew that anyways, right?
Yeah, I think next chapter we're totally gonna see, you know, the fishmen get some light here, because like, you know, we've been cutting to all these characters during Vegapunk talking about his coffee and all this and like getting ready for, but the fishmen are kind of like the last like big island that we haven't like seen yet. Obviously Wano's not gonna get this transmission, but I think that like we're gonna see more from the fishermen this time. But I think the other part of this theory, there's a lot that goes into this like one line, our world is gonna sink into the ocean. So this is a prediction by Vegapunk. So the other thing we kind of have to talk about is, how is this like great flood gonna happen? Like clearly the Gorosei have said in the past like, okay, we're ready for a great cleansing. It seems like this great cleansing is gonna be a great flood of some kind. They're gonna spam this you know, Uranus Lelucia weapon, and the sea level is gonna continue to rise, or there's gonna be something even greater like the red line falling, which has been fated for a long time. You know, in Fishman Island we heard what's her name, Madam Shirley, predict that Luffy would destroy Fishman Island. And so maybe the big long running theory of that is that will happen in the final battle, where Luffy destroys the red line somehow, or somehow the red line gets taken down, Fishman Island goes down, the Noah is there to take all the species of fishmen and like whoever else to survive this like great flood that happens up to the surface until the battle is over, Ragnarok is over, or whatever. We think that probably that's going to happen in connection to Elbaf. I think that's when, you know, the big fight is going to start. But so I think the question now is like, how exactly are they going to flood it? Is it going to be with this weapon? Because
so I actually have, that's the other big thing that I wanted to get to, is how this is going to happen. And one of the things that I've been racking my mind about is, over, like, we've all been thinking, like, how do they know that in 800 years from the Void Century, this is going to happen? Like, we saw Joy Boy predicting it back then. We saw Roger being like, damn, I'm too early for this. How do they know when this is happening? And the one thing I've heard recently that makes a lot of sense to me is the alignment of the planets. So celestial movement is something that we can predict in our real world. The reason we know, like, we can predict eclipses, for instance, for hundreds of years in the future, is because they're on this elliptical orbit that is a pattern. Like, they do this all the time. And even though it happens over a long period of time, maybe, or not maybe, but we can predict when these things are going to happen. And one of the things that you can predict in that case is you can predict the movement of the planets and when they're all going to be aligned. And we saw in the last title of the chapter, it was talking about the alignment of the planets. And the obvious upfront thing is, yeah, the alignment of the Gorosei, because they are the 5 elder planets. But maybe it's hinting at these planets are going to align, and because of the alignment of the planets, it's going to create some gravitational force on the world that pulls the water towards it. So for instance, we know the moon in our world, that's what creates tides, right? Is the gravitational force of the moon on the world creates the moving water in certain directions. So what if all the planets aligning create such a strong gravitational force that it forces all the water to flood the entire world? And then at that point is when we would need the red line to fall in order for this flood to kind of subdue and kind of spread out across the world, because the red line acts as a giant dam across the world and nothing can get past it. So maybe what I was thinking, and I don't know exactly how this would happen, but maybe Imu created the red line, so once he falls, it's kind of like part of his devil fruit where everything around him kind of disappears, like we saw with Sugar. When she's knocked out, everyone stopped being toys. So maybe if he's knocked out, the red line disappears, and that's what kind of subdues all of this. But I don't know, I really like that theory about just the way they were able to predict all this stuff is due to the planets aligning. And we saw it. That is really
interesting, because we haven't really like had an explanation as to like how all this like future shit is being predicted, because you know, we've heard over and over Odin knew something was going to happen, that Joy Boy was going to show up on whatever. Like, I think there's like a few more like mystical elements that could attribute to it, but I really do like that like scientific theory about it, you know.
One of the things that helps me solidify that this could be important is when we saw the research, I was gonna say lab, but like the research library that was in Ohara, we saw that the sculpture that they had of the globe was surrounded by tons of different moons or planets. We don't know what they really are, but we haven't really seen anything like that since. They've never referenced it since then. We've only gotten a reference to the one moon that we have. So what are all these other planets? And maybe they were trying to also predict some of that stuff.
Yeah, like that was like a world chart or like a map to see what exact date the planets would align so that this like great catastrophe would happen or whatever. And maybe they read the poneglyphs. There was gonna be like some kind of prediction of that in the poneglyphs, and so that's kind of like how they were led down that path of research. I like it. I mean, I think that there's a lot of possibilities as to like how the Great Flood could happen, because obviously like the easiest one for us to put together right now is there's this little Lucia bomb, but like I don't think that is gonna be like a huge thing like moving forward in the story. It looks like it would because it just blew up an island, but they're gonna need the mother flame, right? And like York is in the Gorosei's mind right now. It seems like York is like the only way to do this because they're planning on killing all the other Vegapunks. They're trying to preserve punk records, obviously, but who knows if that's actually gonna like go through and if they're gonna be able to like fire this thing multiple times, or if it's gonna be like right now the way I see it is that the Gorosei clearly know what it will take to get this big flood to happen, right? Because they're like there has to be this big cleansing, whatever. I think that is talking about like the flood and not necessarily just the fact that they're able to like fire a bunch of bombs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I agree with that because like you said, like yeah, they can fire these off and we saw that it raises the sea level. How many of these can they really fire off? If it was that important, why haven't, or if it was that easy for them to use, why haven't they done it more often? And I think that goes back to, like you said, the mother flame, and it's just not a super easy thing to make or to use. I don't know exactly. So I think while that is going to play part of it, I don't know. I think there's going to be more that we haven't quite found out yet. Yeah.
I know there's also all these theories about the Umi Bozu or whatever it's called, the yokai that people think that Emu is based off of, which is like this like sea demon. So there's also the possibility that like Emu, we don't know Emu's devil fruit yet, if he even has a devil fruit. We don't even know if the Gorosei are devil fruits or not. Like at first everybody thought they were mythical devil fruits, and then now people are like more on my side, which I'm claiming that because I said that from the beginning. I didn't like that they were all mythical zoans. They totally could be still. They definitely could be, but I think they're like an extension of Emu's will somehow, or like powers given to them by Emu. So the idea is that like, let's say Emu does have a devil fruit, it could be like the water fruit, right? Like that would be the most OP one. If there is like a Logia that was water. We haven't seen that yet, obviously, because they wouldn't in theory be affected by the effects of the water, and the Umi Bozu is like a creature that roams around in the water, like attacking ships and shit like that. So it could be something to do with that, with the Great Flood. Maybe his awakening can do something.
So that's actually making me think of something now, is because I like that idea, and I wonder if you could combine that with the planets aligning thing, where maybe, like I was saying, the planets align, which raises the sea level, but at the same time, we also have the moon going in between the Earth and the sun, and we get an eclipse at the same time. And maybe it's along the lines of like we did with, or not we, but like in Avatar, where they had an eclipse and all the water benders were so much stronger, and anyone that used water powers had so much extra power. What if it's the same thing with Emu here? Once that eclipse and the planets align, maybe that's when he's at his strongest.
And that's when he's ready to make his move, yeah.
Exactly. And that's why he's saying, hey, the Great Cleansing is coming now, because he knows this is going to be coming. So I think that's a really interesting idea. I
think it could be cool. I think that could all align. Like, you know, I think they have to have some kind of like grand plan. But it seems like both parties, you know, the Joy Boy's side and Emu's side, know to an extent that there is going to be like this big thing that happens, right? And that it will be up to one of them, whoever is the deciding factor, to like triumph or whatever. It's either going to be Joy Boy, Luffy, that is able to do it, or it's going to be Emu, so we'll see. I also wanted to kind of bring up Blackbeard, right? Because he's the anomaly
I was
here.
thinking the same thing.
So
Because Blackbeard is going to be the weird one, because unlike Shanks, his crew is the complete opposite, right? Like, they're collecting devil fruit.
Yeah,
but if
he's
the
the
whole
wild
world is
card.
gonna flood, he's
like-
gonna be fucked by that.
right, but it makes me think that, like, what does Blackbeard know, or is he just like, damn, and like that's the end of his storyline? Like at that point, he's just like, oh shit, I didn't know all this. Like he's hearing Vegapunk and he's like, fuck. But
Which seems weird to me, right? Because we assume Blackbeard has all this knowledge and he's done all this research. So does he have a different reason why he thinks devil fruits are going to be so important? Like, it's
or another
confusing.
plan to take advantage of this like celestial event. I really like I'm more on board with like the celestial event thing now, because everybody's kind of interpreting the poneglyphs in like their own way to like capitalize on a big moment that happens. And you know, obviously like that big moment, I just remember this just had me remember when Roger said like, oh, we were too early. Like it's probably because of this, right? That there's like some big thing that's happening, and not just the coming of Joy Boy, because like obviously the coming of Joy, this coming of Joy Boy thing, and like them knowing that Joy Boy was gonna come, like Odin knowing that he had to open the borders of Wano for Joy Boy, makes me think that there's more to this than just like strictly science. Because how could anyone have known that Luffy would get this fruit and then like come save him in exactly 20 years, like would come to save Wano or whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever it is in the poneglyphs and whatever Teach knows, you know, he's an archaeologist, he's a historian, like it's gonna be interesting to see like what he's using the devil fruits for in this grand plan. Like I know I had mentioned before in another theory that one of the reasons he could be wanting the like Boa Hancock's fruit is because the red line could possibly be the snake that wraps around the whole world. And so there's this thing in Norse mythology where part of Ragnarok, which obviously like Elbaf is going to be like very heavily based in Norse mythology. We've already like kind of seen that with Vikings and everything, the lore that's happening there. But the idea is that this snake that wraps around the whole world will like fall into the ocean at some point, or like will unwrap, and that will be like the start of Ragnarok. And so my idea is, it's not my idea, I kind of like took a little bit of this from other creators. I think the Hidden Island said some stuff about this, but that the red line like falling into the earth, like that'll be part of Ragnarok, and it's like representative of the snake. But my idea is that it's like literally the snake, and the whole red line is like a petrified monster, and Teach is gonna unfreeze it to start Ragnarok with Boa's devil fruit. So, you know, that could be like his plan in whenever the celestial bodies align. Like he's gonna use devil fruits to not have to deal with the flood, not have to deal with the water. He said it to Law, you know, like the devil fruits come with their own set of benefits, even with like the great weakness. So that's just what I wanted to get across. I think like it's going to be interesting to see whatever Teach does do. Maybe that's all not true, but you know,
I think that would be a cool idea too, because that shows that Teach is not just like, hey, I'm just kind of going around doing this blindly. He has a plan and he knows what's coming. And instead of other people where it's like, oh, we know this is coming, we're just gonna have to find ways to deal with it, he's like, no, we have ways to combat it actually, and we have ways to take advantage of this whole thing happening. One of the things I was going to mention when you were talking about Wano is, I know I mentioned earlier about how you can see that the sea level did rise above everything else, but inside Wano, or I guess underneath Wano, we know there's a crap ton of water like that was trapped beneath the walls. And I wonder if one of the things Momonosuke saw is maybe he didn't want to break down the walls yet because it's going to create this flood faster than it's intended to happen, because that water has to go somewhere if you break the walls. Meaning it could spread across the whole world and cause the flood to start happening faster and faster. So maybe he needs to wait just a little bit longer so the flood happens at the exact right time. But I don't know, there's a lot that goes into this, and there's just a lot of different things that can happen, which I think is one thing that's so cool about the ending of this chapter, is how many different directions that you can take this in. Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that like we're gonna see more obviously in the next chapter. I'm hoping that Vegapunk is gonna say more than just this. Obviously this is like a big thing, but the transmission's not over yet. Like we did see what we all thought was kind of happen, that Mars got faked out and this transponder snail was like fake, and like the transmission's coming from somewhere else. Everybody thinks it's coming from the Kamabaka Kingdom, from Dragon and all that, and that's why Dragon and him had that conversation at the beginning of the arc. But regardless, like I think there's gonna be more from Vegapunk here.
I definitely think so. One of the things I saw Joyboy Theories mention was this is a good strategy where you reveal the big reveal instantly. So Vegapunk says, hey, look, the world's going to sink. And then after the big reveal, we get the justification for it. So I think that's what's going to come next from Vegapunk, is explaining why he's saying this. Because right now, he could just be saying, hey, the world's going to sink. And if it were to cut off here, people would be like, I mean, sure, whatever, like that might not make sense. But if he actually goes through and gives that justification of why he knows the world is going to sink into the ocean, I think that's going to make this a lot more impactful.
Yeah, he instantly revealed it after his 10 minutes of instant coffee. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. That's gonna be it from us. Like, follow, comment, subscribe, whatever you gotta do. Go down there.
And
in
instead
the
of fighting us, I actually want to hear your guys' theories in the comments, because this one's actually really interesting.
Yeah, I want to see if you like the theory, or if you guys have your own theories. We'd love to just like talk in the comments, because like there's a Twitter, YouTube, all the theorists are going like bananas over this chapter, and like us too. Like we want to hear it from you guys. So hit us up in the comments. Go check out our other videos. We got a bunch of content on here, a bunch of versus battles, some fun ones that have a good amount of discourse, and I'm sure we're gonna have some more soon. The tier list is gonna have to be updated
guys.
soon.
Keep it up. I mean, yearly tier list for our top 30. We'll have one at the end of the year. A bunch of stuff is definitely going to change.
Yeah, it's gonna
especially with stuff happening in this chapter with power scaling. We didn't even mention how Sanji kicked the Gorosei
and then he
got chomped right after.
Oh, dude, Bonnie, I'm scaling up after this. Like, she went crazy.
Bonnie's been cooking. Ever since she found out Nika's real, she's just fighting people.
She's just becoming Luffy. She's like doing Luffy's moves. It's nuts. All right, y'all. Peace out.
Peace.